everyone, and welcome to episode 10 of the Rewatch podcast presented by the Terrible Video Gamers Club. I'm your host, Tyler Schatz, casual observer of the Battle of Blackwater Bay. Joining me this fine evening are Stephen Howard.
I tried to come up with a line for this ship joke, but none of them were fire, so.
Nick Castillo.
It's Nick. Hello.
Amanda Howard.
This is Amanda, the watcher beyond the wall.
Ooh, there we go. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Gary Delaney.
Hi, everybody. I couldn't think of anything funny in the last 30 seconds, so I'll work harder next time.
Okay. All right, so for this episode here, we are covering episode 9 and episode 10 from season 2. Episode 9 was titled Blackwater. Episode 10 was titled Vala Morghulis. The quick recap for episode 9 here. Stannis Baratheon's fleet and army arrive at King's Landing and the battle for the city begins. Cersei plans for her and her children's future. Because this episode mainly, entirely covers nothing but the events that happen at King's Landing with the invasion from Stannis' fleet here. So I wanted to just kind of call off this first little touch here the two touches that I picked up here right away. So it kind of introduces right away with Davos sailing on Stannis' fleet into Blackwater Bay, and he's sitting there talking to his son. And earlier in this season, Davos has kind of come more into learning about the Red God due to the smoke monster that was used to kill Renly. And it's interesting, I picked up on a little point that he's having with his son there. He's having a good conversation with his son, who his son is just this true believer. He is all for Stannis. He is all for the Red God and everything like that. And his son kind of catches Davos talking when they're talking about, Davos still calls for hopefully the gods will watch over us or something like that. And Davos' son quickly catches him, corrects him, says, God, there is only one God. I thought that was really good that, it's showing that this guy is really the true believer there. And the other point I wanted to just touch on here before I throw it over to somebody for a conversation was it was just an eerie chill to the kind of the start of the episode. Just the terror and the fear basically perpetrating everyone's voices there. The biggest one I thought capped off too was just Tyrion sitting in his bedroom there with Shay he just got kind of the blank stare on his face because you could tell he's just thinking about, everything that is about to come on and happen there. So, to start it off here, I'm going to throw it over to Steven here to just see where do you want to go with some questioning for this episode.
Oh, I wanted to just, I agree with you about the eerie feel to the beginning of this episode with Tyrion obviously contemplating his life. Everyone it's the calm before the storm, and it's the terror happening. But then also it goes to the ships actually moving towards the Red Keep, to King's Landing, I should say. And I got a weird vibe this time watching it of almost watching Band of Brothers, another HBO series, where you have all those troops on board a ship it's a plane in Band of Brothers at that time, but they're all in this ship and everyone is dead silent. They're all focused on themselves. There's some people puking, and you only have the officers really talking or really doing anything. And it was I don't know if I want to say eerie similarity, because obviously it goes very differently than D-Day, but it was just something that this time around watching it, I didn't catch it or didn't strike me as that last time, but it was very similar. And I was wondering maybe because they're both HBO productions, maybe that's kind of where they came from. They were saying, all right, how are we going to present these soldiers obviously going to thousands of deaths? How is this going to be presented? Well, let's do it from how we did it on D-Day.
I think it was definitely there's a lot of time trying to build into that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to set up that, like, on the ships, they're trying to do a sneak attack so it's eerily calm. Like, they're not bullshitting on the deck of the ship. Like, they're trying to be eerily calm to try to attack by night. I guess I was curious how the build-up, that was very, like, kind of supposed to be a surprise when you see the wildfire, if that was also kind of built up in the book, or if that was, like, the hand was tilted a little sooner before everyone's burning alive.
I think it wasn't. It was a little bit like you knew, like Tyrion was looking into the wildfire. He was looking into a chain, but you didn't know how it was all going to come together
That's
till the
that's
battle. And I love that, honestly.
that's right. There's a big chain that is mentioned throughout the book, and I can't remember exactly what that was for. Was it just basically to break the masts of the ships as they sail through, or
I think it
No.
was
It
to keep
locks
them
him
from
in.
going up the river. So they had
No, so-
to. It
Yeah.
forced them to be at one entrance, like to land their boats at that
Interesting.
gate.
Yeah, it locked a lot of ships in the bay as well, and this is something that the Ottomans
Genius.
actually did. This is a historical kind of thing. They had a giant freaking chain that they would pull up above the Bosphorus that doesn't matter what type of ship you have, that ship isn't going to be able to sail through. And in this case, they used it to lock all the ships in while they're on fire. And it causes the chaos of all those ships being around, not being able to maneuver. Most of them are on fire. You touch another ship that's on fire, you're catching fire.
Yeah, you're
I
right.
very, oh, I
Raise the
very
anchor.
much.
Sorry. Oh, you just made me realize. You're right. They raised the chain after the ships went past it, so they were trapped. Brilliant, honestly.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I shit on. I don't know if I can cuss. I crap on this show.
Have you met Gary?
A fair amount for some of the military things that, or the tactic things that happen. This is one of them that I really liked and I really enjoyed. Kind of moving off that even little, the thing that didn't enjoy so much, all of the entire Stannis' fleet seeing one ship coming at them and no one going, yeah, this is really weird. We should just sink it. Just
And like honestly, I thought of that too. Like, why don't we sink this fucking ship? Because if the ship goes down, it's still gonna spill wildfire, but it's not gonna drag it through the rest.
Right.
you're not
Like,
gonna have that big boom that happens when it.
or you wouldn't just ram it. Just be like, hey, hey, you guys, ram that fucker.
Like fire ships were used historically too, lighting ships on fire and loading the cannons and stuff and sending them on into things. So like, wouldn't have been unknown tactic, I imagine.
so? I have a
I love
question.
when.
Go
sorry,
ahead, Nick. Nick, sorry, all you.
I was going to say, I love when shows, fantasy shows specifically, pull historical context from things like that. That's interesting to hear about the chain. Yeah, there's a moment or two where Davos sees the green dripping out of it and screams, "Wildfire!" Just like everybody else watches it coast for another good 30 yards closer, and then it blows up, you know? It's interesting to say the least. I also want to touch, like you said, Tyler, on the ambiance of the building up. You know, it's not just a battle; it's a battle at night. It's on the water, and there's this mist and fog kind of over the water, so you can't really see the ships. I think Joffrey or Tyrion has this line about there's only a handful of ships there, where the others, and then you see more coming out of the fog, and you get a scale for how big this battle's going to be. And yeah, it's this weird hesitation from all sides. Like the folks in the Red Keep and King's Landing are terrified of when they're going to come or what are they going to do. Is this plan going to work? And the people on the boats are wondering why they don't see any of their ships. And the thought I had kind of throughout this whole show, as we talk about more of these, is that something from a military perspective is that these moments of actual combat, actual warfare, really show who these characters are. Like each person has a very obvious tell as this episode unfolds, and it's kind of this moment where they are their true self, or they see the world as it really is. And I thought that was really interesting, like how the conversation you just mentioned about Davos was my takeaway on the ship there, where he's talking with his son, where yeah, his son is full on in the Kool-Aid, talking about this is only one God, and don't worry, we have the High Captain here. Kind of that, you know, only the leadership is talking, like what you were saying, Stephen. But Davos is still talking about, well, what about this? Well, I don't know if I agree with you because of this. And I've seen plenty of other, you know, he has that line about like there's 5 royal navies right now. And it's this very pragmatic conversation about, you know, war is terrifying and it's unsure, but these are the things that I'm still keeping in perspective. Like he's not, you know, his son is 100%, don't worry, we'll win because we have the Lord of Light on our side. And his father's saying, don't worry, you know, there's still some concern to worry. I have these other things in mind as well. And it's that perspective that really helps paint who these characters are.
as you said, his son drank the Kool-Aid. Like, he is very much like, yes, but by the end of the night, Stannis will be on the throne. And Davos is like, holy shit, dude. Like, we got another couple fucking hours to go
He's
through
like, we
shit
got to put him there
before
first. Is
we're
his
going to
line.
get anywhere near an Iron Throne. Like, let's focus on the next couple hours here.
A phrase I always steal from Game of Thrones when I'm speaking to somebody like that'll say something like that, and I'll be like, "Oh, my sweet summer child." It works, and it's from the show for a very good reason. Oh, by the end of the night, so and so will be king. Not quite how it works. Lots more.
Right. If you think this is going to have a happy ending, then you haven't been paying attention.
Ooh, there you
Ooh.
It's my favorite.
So I wanted to ask a question about the wildfire here, and I couldn't remember if this is just me making something up or if this was mentioned in the books. Does that burn still when you're in the water? Like, if you're set on fire with wildfire, even if you jump in the water, it's not going to put you out, right?
I'm pretty
It
sure.
burns flesh. Like,
Yeah.
it burns.
I
Yeah.
think it's modeled after the Greek fire.
That's what I
correct?
assumed after Greek fire.
And Greek fire was notorious for the reason why it was so dangerous is if you put water on it, it would burst into more fire. You had to put it out with sand.
Holy moly.
That was why it was so dangerous to ships, and that's why it'd be so dangerous in this context as well, I'm assuming.
Another thing then too, kind of going back to even like the Davos and the Sun conversation, is that they're talking about like the bells ringing there.
Oh, yes.
Like as they approach there, and then it's also cut to another line of Varys talking about how he hates the bells ringing because it usually signals horror, a dead king, the city under siege. But then they mentioned too, it doesn't ever signal surrender here, which I thought was a very interesting point here. So put a pin in that point there for some point in time. We may revisit it, that section there.
The bells.
Uh,
I picked up on that as well.
You got anything else, Stephen, for us?
I guess we're almost going chronologically right now, talking about some different points in it. Because as we go on, I think obviously Sansa trying to get Joffrey's, goat by and my brother goes out on the front lines. Why wouldn't my valiant husband be able to go out on the front lines? Sort of thing. And I thought it was funny. I thought it was not as clever, obviously, as she thinks it is, but it's what else can she do at that point?
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoyed that. And I also enjoy Cersei's mental freaking breakdown the entire episode.
She's slowly getting drunker and drunker on the wine there and slowly realizing what's going on from the conversation from Loras always coming in. No, Lancel. Sorry. Lancel coming in and always reporting this stuff happening.
It's a little bit revealing about Cersei, too.
Exactly.
As a Lancel, like, just random fact, I realized on the rewatch that I consistently mix up Lancel Lannister and the other Tyrell dude. Loras. Because on every subsequent watch, I thought it was the Lancel Lannister that comes in with the dad, not the Tyrells.
I win. Yeah, that was interesting too. I hadn't caught that. That he's the one who walks in, because the last we see Oris Tyrell is he is fleeing after
Renly's been killed.
Renly, after Renly's been killed, because he was like his right hand man, and then here he's walking in with the Lannisters, and so yeah, it's very interesting.
Anyway, that's jumping ahead.
It's the whole Cersei thing is interesting. There's so many reveals of who these characters really are. I think that yes, as Cersei realizes her situation is becoming bleaker and bleaker, she is getting drunker and drunker. But how she talks about she doesn't think that the prayers are helping, and she doesn't think that, like, she looks at Cersei at one point and says, "You're perfect, aren't you? Like, no matter how bad the situation is, you should just sit back and drink some more and relax and realize the world has gone to crap like I have." And yeah, it's Cersei's look, like you said, what else can she do? But she still puts on the face that she has that really shows who she is. Like, she really kind of stays true who she is this whole episode, whereas the world around her and the people around her freak out. Yeah, like the comment she has about her husband being in the vanguard. Of course, she'll be brave enough to be in the vanguard. Like Tyrion, Tyrion is the only one who really kind of picks up on her sarcasm. There's a line that before the battle, she says, "I'll pray for you," and he's like, "Will you really?" She goes, "Just like I pray for the safety of Joffrey," and it's like, oh, there it is. Yep, okay, and he just kind of smirks, like he catches that she's not really fond of the Lannisters. Yeah, her brother, her husband is not. The whole kiss the heart eater thing really ticked me off.
So
Turd.
you mentioned something, Nick, to a great point that I wrote down there of how a lot of people's actions and stuff reveal kind of who they are throughout the episode. I wrote this down because there was one point that really clarified it for me of like the event that is happening on screen and everybody's reaction to it. It was when the ship blows up there in the bay. They get a flashback basically of like all of the people at King's Landing and actually just a bunch of other people. But you get like Tyrion kind of looking disheartened because he knows he basically just killed a lot of people for this battle. Then you have the like the wildfire maester there.
Pyromancer.
Thank you. The
Pyromancer.
pyromancer.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
he's got kind of the look of kind of like glee on his face, like it worked. All this work did. The Hound obviously is looking on in horror because he just has a very big fear of fire. And then the one that really stood out was Gary's boy Joffrey there, was just looking on with just absolute glee and utter satisfaction at all of this death and destruction that happened out there in front of him. So going back to your point, that really kind of just echoes like, and for me, this one moment basically shows what everyone's thoughts are on what is happening right now.
Interesting.
And Braun. Like, Braun was just told to shoot a fire arrow, but I don't think even he knew what the fuck was going to happen. Because Braun is the original implementer of the previous plan, which is that up to this point, you assumed that they were going to shoot the wildfire out of catapults. Like, that was the plan. Like, and I actually, on a rewatch, I was like, oh, well, don't they, like, pour the wildfire down the edge of the battlements? No, like, the wildfire is a one and done. So he used up all of the wildfire on this one ploy that filled that one ship full of 1,000,000 jars, like a million 1-gallon jugs of milk, like in this ship.
It was like pouring out of the hull as the ship was going through the water.
Was it okay? So was it pouring out, or was it intentionally
I think it was
unplugged and sent
Intentional,
on?
leaving a trail. So he just had to shoot. Well, I was thinking that in the tactics of how would he have to shoot and hit the boat specifically, but then when he shoots, you see he actually just hits the trail, which is easier for an archer because he would just have to shoot straight and it would hit the trail and then the fire would snake down the way after the boat.
Yeah,
rather than
considering the
having
boat
to
keeps
hit.
going,
Exactly.
has to go pretty far. Pretty chancy to risk on an arrow in the night at dark ships.
Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
and I thought it was actually a kind of a clever play because I mean, you're right. It is a one and done, and even Stannis says it. The imp has done his trick. Now we storm the keep basically, and it's a very important trick because it kills a lot of Stannis's men. Takes away one of the commanders, one of the main commanders, because it's blown to smithereens. And when you're storming a walled fortification, I mean, there's a thing out there that says you always have to have 3-to-1, numbers. It's not based in anything, but what it's meant to say is that you have to have overwhelming superiority of numbers to storm a walled fortification, unless you're going to use subterfuge, which you're not. So you kill a lot of those people, and Stannis needs every single one of his people. And to quote Rob, he needs his people more than Tywin. Tyrion needs, I guess, though his at that point in time, because it's just, yeah.
Well, I was curious if you guys thought that like starting the ships on fire also changes where like they need to attack. Like it very much limits like where you have to defend. Because I think in previous episodes they already knew that it was going to be attacked at the Mudgate.
Mm-hmm.
kind of wish they had shown the chain in the show as well, because
Yeah.
that was it. Like the utter chaos of them not being able to leave, them slamming into each other, and
Not being
all
able to
going for this
maneuver.
point, and the motion of the river too, carrying them inevitably to this point in the chain. Like no matter what, like they were headed for destruction, even if they didn't get hit by the wildfire right away.
Chaos is an insane
Right
thing in
there,
battle, and
you could
that's
demoralize the entire enemy troops right there. I know if
Yeah.
all these ships burst on fire, I'm gonna be like pretty demoralized.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, Stannis knows it too, because he has that line too. Is like, let's rally the troops for landing. And he's like, won't that kill us? Hundreds? And he says, thousands. Yeah, he knows how screwed that made him, but it's his determination. I was trying, like I said, to rewatch this episode with a clear perspective of what happens to these characters. And by the end, yeah, they have to haul him off. I was like, does Stannis leave this battle? Does he finally realize how futile it is at one point? And
Doesn't.
no, he
is
screams,
still-
"Stand, you cowards!" until the very end when he's being hauled off by his own men because he's lost.
And also, he
There you go.
still, even though he's fucked, he just like he still jumps off his ship and is like, we're gonna attack this. Like he is still he doesn't have a hey, we should maybe retreat. We should maybe rethink this because we need to live to fight another day. This isn't the time.
Watching this episode, like I said, kind of trying to keep in mind who these characters are as they were talking, and partly Tyrion's knowledge, mostly his knowledge, because he's smart. He's not a battle tactician. He's smart, and he's read a lot of books on warfare, I imagine. Because there were a couple times he was giving orders, and he's like, rain fire on them. Archers, to your marks, hold the line. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, he's no commander. Maybe because of who he is as a Lannister son, he's maybe had some tutors or things like that have trained him in warfare or how to be a knight. He's not a knight. He's probably never had those roles.
Heard the stories of great knights, and sort of as they're written. So he probably just plays the part of the knight as they're written, and so that's how that's the only way he knows how to play it. It's just pretend that you're the biggest guy on the field and move forward.
I agree with that. Play it up is kind of the takeaway from that, Gary, because he has all these knowledgeable things, just like you said about the words to use and what terms to say. There's a part there when they kind of feel like the tide turn and the Stannis' army is battering at the door and everybody's like, we're screwed, we're going to leave, and Joffrey turns tail. And it was kind of a thing that caught my attention in this was I noticed that Tyrion wasn't giving orders anymore. He sort of talked to the men and gave them this speech, but none of that was from some past great leader. It was all him coming up with what to say to rally the troops. And again, my perspective of watching this episode, I kind of saw each character kind of come into their own of who they really are. And most people fell short. Tyrion jumped up in status. And it was his rallying cry, his determination, is telling everybody else what to do. Like he turned to Sir Mendon, who I didn't even remember was at the battle, but this other knight in the Kingsguard and was like, you do this. The knight was like, yeah, okay, sure. Like he wasn't like half man, screw off. He had this commanding presence after the Hound, after the King, and several other prominent figures in that war party left. And he was the one who took charge of all that. And that was a distinction there between what he may have read what to do to what he decided was what to do was the right thing to do.
And I think that I agree entirely with that. And I think that it goes down to if you look like you know what you're doing, people assume that you know what you're doing and they will follow you to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree completely. I will say, jump off that a little bit as well and say, you know who else revealed themselves and their true character? Pod. Pod for King. Pod for King. Days.
That was pretty sweet.
So yeah, Pod does have some good stuff in this episode, and then he also, I'm sure as Steven's trying to allude to there, he steps up and saves Tyrion's life there when Tyrion is being betrayed by the Gold Cloak there on the battlefield.
Yes,
The
shoved
same
that spear right through his face.
Gold Cloak who was supposed to hold the King's banner, or was it the other one? There's two that were supposed to go in.
I think it was the one who was supposed to hold the banner. I could be
Kind of
wrong.
saw that too. I was wondering if that was at one point like as tall as the person was. I don't know if it was just shot low from Tyrion's perspective, but I was like, is that Clegane?
Right? Yeah.
And then like it wasn't. Obviously, we find out later. It wasn't him. It was just some guy. But yeah, it seemed like that was who that was supposed to be. I don't know.
And I think it also shows really well just the chaos of battle. I had no idea who it was when it happened. You see it happen, it's the shock of what happened. Slice right past I was about to call him Theon this time.
Tyrion.
Tyrion.
Thank you. I know it started with a T. A slice across Tyrion's face, and that's what you're sitting. You're sitting there going, "Oh my God, did he just kill Tyrion? No way!" And obviously, doesn't end up that way. But it's you don't barely even get to register who it is that's actually doing the slicing, because then he gets a spear shoved through his head by everyone's favorite character.
There,
I don't remember
there's so
Jon
many.
Snow being there.
There's so many.
Joffrey's inside, nice and safe.
There's so many violent deaths in this episode. Like I know that it's the first big war that we see, but like the Hound slashes some dude and like chops him in half, right? And there's another dude who gets like a sword across the face and knocks the top of his head off. And so yeah, absolutely. When that slice happens to Tyrion, like there's a part of me that was kind of like waiting for his head to slide, because that's how it looks when it first happens. And I think as an audience member, maybe it was shot or cut that way to make it look like, oh crap, you realize it's just his face.
Hey Nick,
You think they
Don't-
went to excessive brutality ahead of that? So when you see the slice, you perhaps think that that's like that it is more violent than it turns out to be.
Be
I was gonna say, Nick, remember, don't die with a clean sword.
right.
Mm.
Yeah, don't die with a clean sword. There's just so many great comments and one-liners in this episode that really show who these characters are. Like juxtapose that from the Hound to where he ends up at the end of the episode, right?
Yeah.
There's this clean cut where it's like he sees the wildfire and he sees the fire and the torment of like this one random soldier who he'd probably lay low in a heartbeat running towards him but covered in fire. It just like throws his whole perspective off beat and he just stands there. Anyone who dies with a clean sword, I'll rape their corpse. Then he walks back in, F the King's Guard, F the city, F the king. To the king, right?
Well,
this is the same Joffrey who took another man's tongue for singing a song about him in court one time.
I have it written down like he's kind of done being treated like the dog there. Basically, he's done being basically scolded and told what to do, how to go out and kill. He's like, I'm done. I'm getting out of here, basically. We've kind of been on all over the place here with this. Nick, do you have anything kind of further you wanted to touch on?
We've talked a little bit about the battle. We can certainly go back to the battle. Again, I really was interested in the character development in this story. I'm curious to hear everyone's perspective on Cersei's Nightshade.
Makes sense.
Justified for what she thinks is going to happen, or do you
hell
think
yeah.
that she's giving up?
I
No.
was really interested by Cersei's conversations in this thing because, like, especially in the book, not really in previous episodes, but like this episode, she says so much. Like, she has a really clear understanding of what is going to happen to her and the townspeople and the other women if the city falls. Very
Mhm.
clear understanding to the point where she's drinking to get through it. She's very clear on what's going to happen to Sansa, who is obviously shocked by that. And yet, like, Cersei had no understanding of battlefield like tactics. She wanted to pull the king off of the battlefield. She pulled the city to make wildfire with no plan with what to do with it. She just had her mobility because Tyrion, at least in the book especially, was shocked when he found this because he's like, she has enough to blow up King's Landing right here. Yet she has such a clear understanding of exactly what will happen to her and everybody else if the city falls.
Do you think her original plan was instead of taking the Nightshade or like letting Ian Payne like kill them all, was to just blow the fuck up the Red Keep? Like
Me?
that was the self-destruct button?
I guess my thought was, why didn't she, like, maybe she doesn't know about the tunnels. I would have to imagine she does know about some of the tunnels. So why didn't she have a plan to escape then? I guess like giving up King's Landing means you give up the power or whatever of being who you were. So, and then you'd be seen as a traitor or a coward or whatever. But I guess I
Sure,
don't know
well,
maybe why she didn't be like, well, my father's outside the city somewhere. I'll go find him.
It's
it's actually
true.
a
She
good
never
question.
does.
Yeah.
Like never once does she make an attempt at escape. Doesn't talk about the possibility of escape or that there's no escape. She
Well, maybe
just
that
doesn't
actually
go there.
that actually sorry, real quick. That actually blends really well in with Nick's point, though. That's her mentality coming into this. It is do or die. She's going
It's
in there
true.
and she's bringing in nightshade poison to kill herself, her son, and those that she loves. She's bringing in ill and pain to kill all these people. She's not looking at surrendering. She's not looking at retreating. She's not looking at running. It's this or nothing.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. That's what she says. If
Also,
the
maybe as a setting where she decides to make her last stand is while sitting on the Iron Throne. Like,
Point.
so I feel like she just knows that in the story of the ages, if they lose, they're not going to talk about what happened to Cersei Lannister, but she's hoping that maybe there'll be something of like the Lannisters sat on the throne until the end. Like they found their corpses in the throne room. Like they'll probably say that they committed suicide. Who knows? But like that was where she made her stand. Was like on the throne. Joffrey disappeared. Joffrey wasn't at anywhere in the third act.
Mhm.
So, but anyway, that was you were talking about like what she did, and I was like, well, I never thought about like out of all the places she could have taken the nightshade, she took it on the Iron Throne.
I think to the point that a couple of you are making too, like she makes a comment about she would have a better chance of seducing Stannis' horse.
Hmm.
She knows that she wouldn't be able to survive, you know, being as one of Stannis's conquests or something like that, or maybe saving her skin or the skin of her children if she sucked up to him or something like that. And so yeah, it's kind of like I would be killed if he takes this castle, and so I'm just going to be killed on my own terms. It was interesting. She was giving that, talking to Sansa and talking about what's going to happen. You're absolutely right, Amanda. Yeah, she has a very clear picture, and she's not wrong, unfortunately, about what would happen if they lose that castle, and they're found. It's something that probably isn't talked about in certain circles. So for the queen of all people to say it so bluntly, with every handmaiden there to hear it, it absolutely freaks everybody out and really kind of shows that she has resigned herself that this is going to go south.
So I think it's what kind of queen, what kind of royalty Sansa grew up with. Sansa grew up in Winterfell. No one would probably siege
Honor and family.
Winterfell, and like it's a very honorable community. The men of the North, like that they would never, rape women just because, like they would take the honorable path, whereas from the South, fuck them. I don't know.
There's a
Whereas
point coming
Sansa,
know.
up in the next
Sansa would have
episode
grew up
about
and her
that.
dad would have said that shit as bedtime stories.
Yeah,
Like,
Be
we're,
that Sansa as a lady has just not been in certain circles with the common folk.
Cersei.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh,
There,
sorry, I
there's
said
definitely
Sansa, but
there's
yeah, I think
definitely
Cersei had that as time stories.
there's definitely a point that touches on that thing you were trying to make there about Sansa being naive to how the war world works. Coming up in the next episode for sure.
yeah.
That's my only
Gary
point.
said the Northmen would never do that, and I was like, oh, Gary, my sweet summer child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you met men?
Remember your favorite character? Let's take a look.
um, Nick, do you have anything else you wanted to touch on, or
No, that was it.
all right, Gary, what do you got for us?
I guess the only sort of interesting thing I saw, and I didn't take a lot of notes, was the Reigns of Castamere.
Yeah.
First time you hear it sung. Also, you hear the off-color comment that is the like Lannister song. And I feel like going deeper into things that are later on and there's a deeper story to the song "The Rains of Castamere," which isn't very well, but it's interesting on a rewatch because I didn't ever realize that it was sung at this point, sort of as that
I
song becomes, they slowly introduce things that become more important later on.
I think too, like listening to the music a little bit more in the rewatch here, like I think the melody of Reigns of Castamere is part of the Lannister song that gets kind of played whenever a lot of Lannisters are on scene. So I could constantly kind of hear the melody in the background a lot of the times there if you're just listening like that.
Also, I think a version of it plays at the end of episode 9.
Yes. Yep.
HBO skipped forward, but I think it started playing, and then I was just like, let's party, episode 10.
I gotta give him credit for that because you see the words in the books, but they put them to music beautifully.
Oh,
They
yeah.
do. They did a very good job.
All of that
Could
stuff.
listen to the song if you knew it wasn't such a bad day.
All of that
Right.
stuff too. It's always like, okay, the author wrote all of this stuff down. Now, how do we actually turn it into a real song or something like that? I always find that really amazing.
Digimon
Also,
Rewatch is one of the top 5 composers in the world, I've heard.
He's fantastic.
was
I
it
mean, HBO always does such a good job about changing their music into just fantastic, whatever it might happen to be. Westworld, anything. It's all fantastic music.
hmm Westworld
was
also
the song
composed by
Reigns
the
of
same guy.
Castamere introduced at this point?
What, Gary?
Was the Reigns of Castamere song introduced at this point? Like in the or was it like was Bronn singing it part of the story? I just was curious if it happened in the
Oh, in
book.
the book?
Yeah. Because I think another thing is like I'm guessing that song existed, but it's sort of the setting to which having Bronn just sing it in a brothel, like getting drunk, like because I'm sure they're all on shore leave until shit goes sideways. Like there's no reason to, make sure everyone's paying their taxes or,
It's a
break
very
up bar
somber song.
brawls. Like you're gonna have to kill some motherfuckers in a couple days. Like let's go get drunk and party until then.
That
And
song
obviously,
really.
sorry, Nick.
You're fine. I stepped on it. I was going to say that song really idolizes not so much that we're going to have to go kill somebody, but that, you know, terrible fates befall people who oppose the Lannisters. The words in the song are really, who are you, the proud lord said that I should bow so low, and it's kind of like how don't mess with the lion, and their families have befallen terrible things when that song is sung. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's a something to get them kind of, don't worry, we may come out of this yet, kind of, but at the same time, it's like, death to our enemies kind of thing is what I think of when I hear that song.
Kind of form of not psychological warfare per se, but some psychological operation almost. And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
obviously, they wouldn't think about it in exactly that terms, but they'd have a vested interest in making sure that song is known well and far, and bringing
It's
pride to the Lannisters, scaring their enemies.
great branding for them, honestly.
Oh yeah.
It makes people more afraid to take them on. I mean, who wouldn't?
That's all I had. I didn't. Yeah. Also,
Okay.
there was a couple good interactions between the Hound and Braun, which I don't know how if that was just manufactured for the show or if it's part of the book, but I think it was just kind of a bar fight early on that sort of pays off because Braun's the one who saves the mountain or the Hound before he gives up. So.
Right.
Well,
Braun,
in the
to your
book,
point, Braun has his hand on that dagger. Like he's ready to throw down if the hound attacks him.
in the book, at this point, Braun is not city commander. It is whatever his name, Goldhand. Braun is still just with Tyrion at this point. It's not until after the Battle of Blackwater Bay that Goldhand dies during the battle, and Braun takes his spot.
Interesting. He doesn't get sent up to the Night's Watch.
Braun?
No,
Oh,
the
isn't
guy
that
that
what?
Braun replaced, yeah, didn't.
Isn't that what
No,
happened in
well,
the show that we saw in so far? He replaced him and sent him up to the Night's
Yeah.
Watch, and he's like, "How
no,
dare you?" And he's like, "I'll
no. There
strip
was
you
a
of your
there was a
lands." And
person interposed in between those two. The guy that
oh,
you're
interesting.
thinking of did get sent to the Night Watch, but there is a person in between him and when Braun comes in, and it's I can't
Interesting.
remember his name. Somebody Iron Hand or somebody Gold Hand. I don't remember his name, but
Interesting.
he is just he's shown as a he's not really personified in the books to what I remember. He's just kind of shown as a military professional or a policing professional that gets the job done, and he's effective enough and then just dies in the battle because I mean people die in battles, and that's when
Yeah.
Braun
And
takes
then
over.
just dies.
People just die
They
in
took
Game of
some,
Thrones.
What?
I
yeah.
know, it's ridiculous.
So they
I
took
did
some
a
artistic liberties and shortened some timelines up. But
yeah.
anyway,
You
that's
had to
all I had.
combine characters.
All right, what do
Back
you
to
got
you,
for us,
Tyler.
Amanda?
Mine was already kind of covered. We talked about Cersei. I wanted to see about how interesting her reveals were. Um, Even particularly, she did also notice even during all that she was talking to Sansa one of many times, and she notices Sansa's maid, which is Shay,
Right.
and Shay curtsies to her like the worst curtsy. And I actually love that little detail because yeah, you can't just jump in a castle and think I can just fit in here. Cersei immediately is like, how did you get all the way here in that amount of time without knowing how to curtsy? Yeah, that's a major oversight on Tyrion's part. He should know that. He would definitely catch somebody who did that. He would know.
Yeah. Even we talked about Cersei's kind of blitzed, and she's that quick. You know, she's not. She may be drunk, but she's not dumb. Right? She like instantly pulls that thread. And when did you come from Loroth or whatever, or Lorathi? And it's like, oh shit, I was with a maid. No, you weren't. And, like she's ready to ask her what her backstory is, and then I think it's one of the times that Lancel pops in. And yeah, it's she's very quick.
Cersei's ability to read people, which being constantly
Amazing.
underestimated, like she understands that there's a certain hierarchy, and I'm sure just being a Lannister, you have to understand there's a certain hierarchy of ladies of honor, like that you have to be able to navigate, and you have to understand like whose ass you got to kiss. And
Right.
I mean, obviously, even though she's been the ass to kiss for so long, you don't lose that skill.
Yeah, and not to mention Cersei's been the queen for how long? Like she would have been in charge of multiple people who were in charge of hiring people and recruiting people. Like she knows.
I would actually say that Gary has a pretty good point on that. That if once you become queen like that, you generally tend to lose a lot of those sorts of skills, the ability to read people, the ability to do that other sort of stuff. You just becomes a little bit more complacent. It's a credit to her that she's so good at it still, so amazing, and quite possibly never lost any skill. She kept playing that game. She never became complacent.
Very true.
I had a question for the group. What did we think about Sansa's decision not to go with Sandor Clegane?
Again, I was. You go ahead.
I think she was given the information that was public knowledge at that point. She assumed that like Stannis held her father in very high regard. Like her father in Stannis' eyes died a hero of the realm. Like her father at no point took the easy path and like just sat on the throne. Like her dad was the first one to die in service of like Stannis the King. So I feel like that's where she wants to stay because the safest place is around Stannis Baratheon. And that's all she knows at that point. Like, but for Sandor, he's an enemy of everyone when he leaves. He's an enemy of all Lannisters. Anyone else doesn't know that he's not with the Lannisters anymore. He's just a dangerous guy to be around. I mean, I wouldn't fuck with him, but
I was gonna say I didn't remember a lot of the stuff from the specifics of this episode, and I forgot that she was given that chance. I think we talked about the musical undertones in some of these scenes, and I think there's a little bit of like the Winterfell theme in that moment, where it's like teased of home, like here's my option out, because he's like, don't you want to go home? Directly to her, he says, I'll take you to Winterfell, and it's this kind of moment of like she sees a door, she sees an option, here's a clear chance. She still is hesitant, and to me, I think she's held back by fear. She's still terrified of Sansa, still terrified of Joffrey. She has the really great line early on of, no, Joffrey will come back. Evil ones always live. And she kind of feels like even if this battle goes south, somehow this will come back to her, and she's you know, that indoctrined, that doomed, stupid word, but no, that she's terrified that somehow Sansa or Joffrey will see that she's escaped and come after her. So I think that's to me that's what I saw when she said no to Sandor.
Also, the last time she was around the common people of King's Landing, like they tried to kill her and rape her. So
Sandor saved her at that point.
Yeah, but now
Yeah.
he's a drunk guy sitting there covered in blood, being like, "Come with me, and I'll take you home eventually."
Come with me if
Fair.
you want to live.
he was trying to communicate that, like, and she said at some point, like, you're not going to hurt me. But he was trying to communicate that, like, even though you think I'm the bad guy, like, your dad was a killer. Like, all these people are murderers. Like, they
World's
don't.
built by killers.
There is trying to, like, slowly crush this, like, opinion that there are, like, a knight in shining armor. Like, and I think that's sort of the Hound's constant role in Sansa's hierarchy, is to trying to help her realize that, like, he's not a very good looking dude, but he is someone who tries to, like, live up to, some semblance of honor. But yeah, I think there's several other story beats where, like, Sandor tries to, like, try to take off the rose-colored glasses that she has on.
I think it's an interesting point. We'll have to pay attention to in future seasons. That this time she said no, and then was that her choice? Was that her chance?
Yeah,
Mhm.
she's
What
not going to
happens
be
the
saved
next
by a
time?
drunk. She won't be saved by a drunk knight. It's true.
Oh,
And then, actually, Nick, when you were talking, you actually made me realize one more thing, and that's just an interesting deficit of information that has no real role in this. But Sandor says, "I'll take you back to Winterfell." Winterfell is currently being held by enemy forces, which
Absolutely.
leads me to believe that I don't think the Lannisters know that Winterfell is no longer held by the Starks.
Yeah.
They're a little
would that
self-wrapped up
information
right now
become
in
public?
Blackwater.
I mean, no, 100%. They're focused on that, and like I said, it really doesn't play any big part. But it's just an interesting deficit of information that, for whatever
True.
reason, when I'm watching these, I assume that everyone knows what's happening everywhere else in the world, which is dumb. This is just an interesting. It's two major events that are separated, and one of them nobody knows about.
No, you're right. Well, I mean, and part of it is like Theon killed all the ravens, but like even when Cersei asks Lord Baelish to acquire Arya, she tells him, "My spies in the north tell me the girl is not there."
Interesting.
So she's got connections.
The there's a part where Catelyn Stark says to Robb why she let Kingslayer go, and she's like, "I want to save my boys."
Girls.
And she says she wants to save her girls. Does she know that Theon has taken the boys in Winterfell at that point?
Yes.
Oh.
Hmm.
And so there's this weird, I want to save the girls. Does she know that Winterfell is taken as well? You talk about the deficit of information. Yeah, I don't think that many people know that that's happened. Robb has some conversations with, what's his name? Bolton,
Yep.
saying, I could send some men, and he's like, no, let them know that any Greyjoy who gives up will get amnesty to go back to his homeland, except for Theon. And so yeah, there's only a handful of people that really know what's going on back home too. Interesting, good point to bring up. Seemingly so.
Who's the gentleman on the boat at the very beginning? He knew that there was multiple kings and multiple Davos. He knew that there were multiple kings and multiple royal navies, because that implies that he knows about that there's the War of the Five Kings. I think that's what they call it.
Yeah, I think everybody is aware of that. I think that some more than others know the sheer size of the other armies.
Or the scope of events that are happening. Because, I mean, if your capital is taken, imagine if Washington, D.C. yet tomorrow got invaded by Russians, and for whatever, we're sitting here podcasting, we don't know. Just a weird thing to think about.
Well, that's a cheering thought. Thank you, Stephen.
They'll never do it. They can't even. I won't get.
Why Russia? What's wrong with Russia? They're a great ally.
Yeah, they're fantastic. They could easily roll.
No one can
over
see this.
a
Tyler's
country.
shaking his head.
And
Sorry,
we're all way off.
Yes, we are way off right now. Slava Ukrainian. I don't know what you're talking about.
Do you have anything else, Stephen?
No, that was the last thing that just piqued my interest.
Okay. I have one more point to just bring up, and I did not actually ever discover this thing until I had read the book, and this is after multiple rewatches there. Loras Tyrell is wearing Renly's armor when he assaults King's Landing with the Lannister force. I never ever picked that up until I read the book, and because Loras Tyrell is playing the part of Renly's ghost there, basically to incite fear into the men, because all of Stannis' men think he's dead. So here comes this guy riding in Renly's armor there, and it's really Loras basically hiding in that. Yeah.
I didn't ever pick that. I didn't really pick that up either.
The show obviously
more clear if you read it.
Yeah, you have to read the book basically to pick that up for sure.
I missed it.
But the show does not touch on it at all. Like it shows him in Renly's armor. Like clearly,
does he have like the big hole in the front?
No, he wasn't wearing that set of armor when he got stabbed there. But like when he takes his helmet off, it's got the stag horns on the crown, like the crest of the nose there and everything.
Oh.
So,
okay, normally he's dressed as the Knight of Flowers.
Correct.
I did not catch that. Now I want to rewatch that episode.
And I remember in the book them saying afterwards it was the ghost of Renly. Everyone saw the ghost of Renly. And I was like, yeah, you fucking idiots. You didn't see the ghost of Renly. What are you talking about? So this makes a lot more sense. I skipped that over in the book.
Yep. And then, we just get Tywin Lannister showing up in the throne room there at the end, saying the battle is over, the tide is turned, they have won. Good old Charles.
I have things to say about what happens there. I'll wait for the next for when we talk about the next episode in a couple seconds.
Everyone good with the last episode there? All right. Let's move on to episode 10, titled Valor Morgulis. According to IMDb's synopsis here, Joffrey puts Sansa aside for Marjorie Tyrell. Robb marries Tulsa Marjorie. Jon prepares to meet Mance Rayder. Arya says farewell to Jaqen H'ghar, and Daenerys tries to rescue her dragons. So if anyone at home is keeping score, Peter Baelish is now the Lord of Harrenhal after this episode. He has been gifted that by Joffrey for his work on uniting the Lannister and Tyrell army. And I wrote down this point. It's very convenient that the gods are going to let Joffrey out of his vows to Sansa Stark to marry Marjorie Tyrell just because Sansa's father happened to be a traitor to the realm there. Air quotes around the word traitor.
What are you talking about? They had such a candid conversation happening there. None of it was scripted, and it was very candid.
Church of England type thing.
Okay, I actually made a note of that as I was rewatching it, that it looked really staged, and I don't know if that's poor writing, poor acting, or if it was intentionally designed to be like, I'm going to say this, and then you're going to say like, oh, well, it turns out your whole council like thinks that this would be the right move, that and then somebody else chimes in, and then like that everyone played their part in the play of like switching the queen.
And for
Like
the
it wasn't
people.
yeah. Like perhaps what's the dad's name?
Tywin?
Tywin already knew that the plan is that the trade was that Marjorie was going to be the queen, like, and that was the cost.
The
As
book.
someone who very, a generation earlier betrayed their king
Mhm.
to get their daughter to be the queen as Cersei Lannister, like he completely understood the play. It was his playbook to let Marjorie take over.
It's
So, but I
probably
just
her.
thought it was very staged.
It's probably her play too. Remember, Marjorie had said previously in Renly's camp, "I don't want to be a queen. I want to be the queen."
The queen. Mm.
In the books also, Cersei warns Sansa that she doesn't want to see any show. She better be quiet and sad about it. She better not show any relief or whatever her true feelings may be when this is going to happen.
And so yeah, definitely staged in like actors playing people who are pretending to be bad actors, which is like good on those actors for having to be able to pretend to be bad actors. But I also just was thinking about this while we were talking about it, and you know who's conspicuously not there for that part is Tywin. For someone so powerful who just showed up, just saved the day to not be
No,
part of that
he's
entire
there.
theater. He's there?
He's there.
Yeah, he's there at the beginning. He walks on his
On
horse.
a motherfucking horse.
Okay, but he doesn't say. Does he say anything? Did I miss that?
No, I don't think so. I think he like literally
That's what I was kind of intending.
kind of strolls in on his horse and then strolls out basically on the
Yeah.
horse.
See, no, that's kind of what I was getting at. Is he might have even thought this entire thing up. He is above having to act this all out.
Okay, good point there.
Interesting.
Makes his presence felt when he's not there.
I mean, he did leave a nice pile of horse shit for whoever's around there to clean up for him.
His name is Joffrey. Okay.
That's another kind of stain, I would say. Amanda, we'll start with you then. What do you got for us for this episode?
So first thing that I thought was interesting about this episode is back up in Winterfell, Theon Greyjoy, well surrounded. That poor guy that's just blowing a horn outside the walls, like he's just doing his job. And Theon hates this guy more than anything else in the entire world. I can understand that obsessing over that little detail since that's something he can focus on but he has a conversation with Maester Luwin about Maester Luwin's like, Lord Stark went out of his way to make it your home. You could run, you could do this. And Theon's like, yes, my captors were so kind to me. They were wonderful. The horn blowing again the entire time. But, they're going through options. Maester Luwin's like, there's hidden ways. We can get out of here. Join the Night's Watch. Do this. And Theon just says, like, you might be right. Like, I've gone too far to pretend to be anything other than this.
One of my favorite memes is that picture of like him just screaming, and it's like Jon Greyjoy and the story of my terrible life decisions.
I think though, like it goes back to what we've talked about a lot with Theon so far. Is he just never knew kind of like who he was really. There, he was always being like trying to be this character that he thought the Starks wanted him to be, the character he thought his father, his true father, wanted him to be, and everything. So that was definitely like him kind of, I think, expressing out loud, like, yeah, I don't know who I'm supposed to be really there.
I have a little image in my head of the guy who's actually blowing the horn, and I hope he's sitting there blowing his horn. His friends are around him giggling and saying, "Do it again, do it again." Minutes later, do it again.
Oh, do you have anything else, Amanda?
Nope, not on that.
Okay. Gary, what do you got for us?
Oh, lots of fun. So what's the maester's name that's in King's Landing? There's a conversation between
So Grandmaster Pycelle.
Maester Pycelle. So there's a something I didn't catch the first time through, which was that when Maester Pycelle is helping Tyrion, and he's basically like taking this perverse joy of like the shoe being on the other foot, of being like, oh well, now this is you're like, I'm sure he's in like living in a fucking broom closet, like, because I mean he's still a lord, but they just shipped him out into a random bedroom. But as he leaves, he flicks a coin at Tyrion and says, "For your trouble," which is a callback to when he pulls him, like Tyrion pulls him out when he's like with a whore, and he like puts all this extra cash through the whore. So I thought that was interesting callback I didn't catch the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So that was fun. Going back to Tywin Lannister being named the savior of the city, he rides in on a goddamn horse. Like, he couldn't just walk forward, accept gracefully, like on foot. He understands that this is his legacy. So in this story of him being called the savior of the city publicly, he's on a goddamn horse, like looking as knightly as anyone can fucking be. Like, absolutely no reason for someone to be on a horse in this situation. No one else is on a horse. He didn't even ride into the throne room on a horse the first time. Like, but he's on a horse for this ceremony. No fucking reason. I talked about like the changing of the queen being very rehearsed. Also, next point was the lady who gets has to beat the shit out of another lady by Joffrey, and later accused to be
Peter
Tyrion's
Baelish.
girlfriend.
Yeah. Yep.
Who is that?
Raza? Is that?
Rosalind?
Ross, yeah, for short.
Ross. Okay, I didn't realize that she shows up, I think, in this episode. I feel like the last time you saw her was an end of episode 8, when she's accused of being Tyrion's girlfriend. And Cersei says, I'm going to make you pay for this. And then I think that had a lot more weight when I realized, because obviously there's a crazy episode in between the two story points, that like Varys is trying to like woo her to his side to kind of like tattle on Littlefinger, like, but basically just using all of the shit that's happened to her and being like, I would never let this happen to you. Like, I don't remember where her story plot goes from here. Pretty minor character. But I just thought it was interesting on a
not well.
I'm sure it's a
Does she
happy
become the
ending with
the
sunshine and
lady of
rainbows.
Harrenhal? I just assumed that was how it ended. She's the lady of
Yeah.
Harrenhal.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, that was another thing on a rewatch, because I think it's like kind of a weird shoehorn scene. Not a whole lot else done there. And the last note I had was on the rewatch that before Robb Stark gets married, there is a scene where he talks to his mom about the consequences of getting married. And I didn't realize that conversation happened, I think, before he got married. I originally, like, as you kind of recollect it, you assume that the consequences came afterwards. But it's more poignant that, like, his mom tried to talk him out of it. Like, so there was a little foreshadowing that this was happening. Like, hey, like, you made a promise. And Rob's just like, fuck you. Like, you're the last person to say about keeping promises.
So
Like this did not work out for you and Ned.
I want to
Like,
I want to jump in on this point here, Gary, because I wrote this down too, of this part standing out to me. So is Rob kind of opening this up to the larger group? Is Rob's kind of like answer and response back to his mom, because like he's getting a little cocky there, because like he's basically essentially winning the war there against the Lannisters. They've had to basically retreat down to King's Landing. Or is it also too because his trust in his, like, this conversation seems like he's just kind of being like a snotty kid there to his mom. Is it coming though from him because his mom has basically betrayed the trust in by releasing Jamie there? Like, does Rob feel like he doesn't really owe it to his mom to give an explanation for what he's doing and why he's doing it, even though he made the promise to Walder Frey?
You know what? Before you said anything, I would have said the first. After you said it, the second makes a lot more sense to me. I'll be honest. It
The
seems like something
show.
that. Well, yeah, it seems like something that a petty, not he's not petty, but something that an aggrieved son would want to do to his mom. Oh yeah, you think you get a choice in who I marry after what you did? Yeah, you know what, mom? Go take a long walk off a short pier.
Yeah, the show does actually make that make sense because in the books that's not like she has no clue. He gets married like without anybody knowing, with no forewarning. She has no clue. In the show, they do give like there could be that reason. That's interesting. Good point.
I don't know. I just thought it was on a rewatch, like it sort of came out of nowhere that like, oh, he's getting married. Like, well, that's gonna have consequences. But
I'm sure it'll be fine.
Definitely
True
nothing,
love wins all.
nothing bad will happen at all.
No, true love. Joffrey and Marjorie together forever. Rob and I forget her name together forever.
Talisa?
Lisa.
Whatever
yeah.
her name is.
yeah. But anyway, like, also it's very telling that when they get married, like the level of which he's just like, just on every rewatch of realizing like he doesn't have a wedding ceremony in front of the old gods. He uses, I'm assuming, a wedding ceremony for the seven, which is
Oh,
a
point.
real like. Not only did he not, as a king, hold up his promises of the betrothed, but he gets married to someone and completely disgraces his gods, forsakes his gods, similar to Stannis, and takes on new gods and gets married. Like, that just seemed very telling of like where his headspace was at.
Never caught that
Funny.
detail before, Gary. It's a good point. He does get married in the ceremony of the seven rather than in front of like of a weirwood tree. Interesting, especially for the character they chose, Talisa, which did not exist in the books, but she's not from this land. Like the seven, it's not like they did it for her. The seven gods are not hers.
Um,
Mhm.
It
what
would have made more sense in the book because it was a Lannister.
what
Right.
what makes it a marriage to of the new gods there versus the old gods? It's just the fact that they're not at the werewood tree.
Say the mother, the crone, the
Yep.
that all those words, they name off the seven gods in the ceremony, and as you hear it, you're like, these has nothing to do with like uh the religious beliefs of the old gods
Mhm.
and whatever, the children of the forest. Gosh,
Like,
too
and
much
I think
science fiction. I don't
Catelyn
know if I'm
Stark
mixing them up.
in the books, I think Catelyn Stark reminisces back to her wedding, which they did both ceremonies for both of them. But yeah, this one,
Interesting.
Rob in the movie, he does the seven. He doesn't say his vows in front of a weirwood tree.
Could it be because there are no werewoods down here and he wants to get it done right now?
A,
And
a lot of the
maybe he's
castles
planning on
have
doing it later,
a lot of the castles have a godswood.
even in the
Mhm.
South.
Yeah, I mean, in King's Landing, after Sansa's father dies, she goes there all the time to pray.
It's a good point.
Erie was notable for having a godswood that did not grow, no matter how much dirt they carried up that side of that mountain.
So anyway, I just thought that was really telling that like now he's a secret, he forsaked his oaths, and he's already sort of in shit league with his bannermen because like his mom just sort of betrayed him, like and to add on to that, he just like made a like just broke a promise to someone in wartime to like. So Anyway, that is all I had for this episode, so we can go on to the next person.
Well, real quick, I want to bounce off that. You're right. For all that he is the amazing strategician, the amazing tactician, he can't handle diplomacy for shit, can he? For
Oh.
that, and that's a crucial part of any joint war effort is being able to handle your allies. And you're right, he can't do that.
Does it well in the north when he's winning all the bannermen to his side because they all test him in their various ways.
Mm.
But when it came to this thing, I don't know, he wasn't at the negotiations. His mother made them for him. He just agreed to them at the end. He had the
And then
bridge that he needed. He didn't need those consequences anymore.
And then his mother made the negotiations with Renly's army too.
Ooh, true.
And like the only negotiations you ever see him do up to this point is he sends a Lannister to King's Landing with his terms,
Work
and
on
then the
that.
Lannister comes back, and then they're imprisoned again. Like it doesn't seem like his negotiations is winning
He's
him
do
the
them in
battle.
person, apparently.
I mean, it probably touches back too to him being just as the war continues on and he continues to winning, he becomes more and more arrogant with everything too. Of
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to do this. I can just strategize my way out of it or whatever.
Speaking of really crazy Game of Thrones quotes, a boy so green that he pisses grass.
Yeah, your favorite thing to quote there. All right,
Anyway,
Nick, what did you have for us?
We talked about the one or two things I really had. I didn't have much on this episode. I was more focused on the Battle of the Blackwater. Yeah, just kind of the weird relationships again, as these people are kind of like the Battle of the Blackwater. So many people were focused on what was going on at the war, whereas we're kind of seeing the fallout between. Right, seems like this chaos is kind of settling. Clearly, the Lannisters still hold the Red Keep. What does that portend or foreshadow for these other groups? Yeah, there's just a lot of unknowns. How the Winterland armies, the Winterfell army is doing under Robb Stark. He's not very good at diplomacy. Was kind of the big takeaway I had from this episode. I really didn't have much from this episode.
All right, Steven, what you got?
Well, guys, let me tell you what. I want to start off by saying, number one, Tywin, anyone could have won that battle. If you have an army and you pin an enemy army between yourself and freaking walls, you're going to win. You know who could have won that? The idiot Joffrey. Gary's favorite character could have won that. But
From his room, he couldn't have.
that's an aside. Fair enough. That's an aside. What I really wanted to get to was the events taking place not really in the Seven Kingdoms right now. With my least favorite character, Daenerys. And her trying to get back her
Dragons?
Dragons.
Yeah, she goes into the tower and just has crazy dreams. You see her when she walks into the
Iron
room.
Throne?
Yeah, with the Iron Throne in it, and there's snow falling. Did anyone else get? Flash forward sort of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So
They totally did.
I watched that and I was like, whoa.
The snow.
The snow.
First time
Good.
seeing that image or watching this and seeing the rest of the.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
The snow
So-
in the Iron Throne Room.
So I have to make a point about this. Like during like my multiple rewatches, basically as I was watching, like building my way up to like the later seasons, when I came upon this scene, I thought it was snow, which means that the White Walkers had come from the north down to King's Landing and everything like that. I originally thought, okay, that might because that informed the way I thought like how the show was going to end there, basically, which we'll get to that basically how the show ends here at a later point in time. But I was just like, that really kind of informed a lot of my thoughts of like, okay, this is where the show is actually heading here.
Sense, because it's a very, I mean, watching it in the scene, you're like, she's just kind of dazed out. Watching it as a rewatch, you're going, oh, that could be a very important scene, depending on how you want to interpret it.
You want to interpret it.
And then obviously she sees her child and her husband again because crazy psycho,
Before that, though, she's north of the wall. She's going through the wall, basically underneath the gate, through a snowstorm there to the tent there, which is again that points back to like she's never been north of the wall. She's never been anywhere close to the northern part of the wall. So,
Yep.
What does this vision have to? We all know it as the wall there. Basically, she has no idea what this is, but it's like, and again, it went back to my point of like, well, does that mean then the White Walkers are basically going to come and destroy the Seven Kingdoms here or something like that? Again, we will touch on all of this stuff as we get towards the end of the show.
Oh, remember this.
Do you
Put
think
a
that-
pin in this and
Yeah,
remember it.
another pin for this.
Do you think that adds some legitimacy to the actual power of these mages? Not trying to spoil anything going forward, but like,
Well, these mages
up
are
to this point,
powerful.
yeah, up to this point, you just think they're tricksters, and then this one dude kills like 5 people at once. Like you're like, oh fuck, but maybe there's some power of the visions, or I think the gentleman said that like when the dragons were born, it rebirthed their magic-y powers.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, as we go forward in that scene, obviously she sees her husband and child again, which maybe not as maybe you're seeing future and then past or something like that. I don't know exactly how they're trying to have that play.
I think
And then sorry.
I think a lot of it was more of like a test for her of does she want to stay in this moment where she
That's
is
a good
kind of
point.
like happy and like she has what she kind of wants, but ultimately it's not her ultimate goal of retaking the Seven Kingdoms.
That's a good point. That's a good point that I really should have thought of and did not. So good call. And then the wizard goes out like a bitch.
Make that tower seem more complicated. I can't remember.
What?
Does the book call out like that tower as being slightly more complicated?
House of
I
the
don't
Undying, isn't it?
Yeah.
The House of the Undying
The House
is there.
of Dying.
I feel like I remembered her walking down hallways with doors. I don't remember.
And there was like leaves on the floor. I remember that happening. And
See, now I want to
it
reread
was
that part to see
confusing.
if there's more metaphors that I can get.
Yeah.
I think, and this could be completely wrong here too, but I think there's like voices that are calling out to her too, and I think it's not the voices she knows, but us readers and knowers of the show kind of have an understanding of who they are. I want to say it was Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar or something like that. There's a scene with them possibly. I could be completely wrong though. I'm just misremembering for something that happened earlier in the books too.
I don't remember. I like Amanda said, I think I need to reread that part because I just don't remember.
Yeah, I just can't remember if there was more to that, or if, like, as I said earlier, like you just start mixing up like science fictions, like, or using what story, like the hallway through full of doors is based on.
But then obviously she does complete the tests like Tyler said, and and the wizard goes out like a bitch. So just flames
wizard.
him, flame on, and it happens, and he dies. I am not sure I was super comfortable with. Don't get me wrong, Dadon Daxus. What's his name, Gary?
Donan Daxus,
Thank
the
you.
king of Koth.
So he is in bed with one of Daenerys' handmaids, and this is kind of again where I don't like Daenerys. And she goes to their vault, finds that he has no money. He basically is doing everything on reputation and the thought that he has money, that's a theme that plays a fair amount. Everyone thinks you have money, so yeah, that's what it is. And then seeing that she has no money, she decides to lock them both in the vault to die. And I was like,
I think her minions sort of just walk them in there. It was a silent conversation. No words were said. She's just like, "Oh, get in here, guys." I don't know.
it's another, to me, it's another foreshadowing scene to what happens later on with her dragons and them
Oh.
breathing fire on something.
Interesting.
I just assume that you like she's so mad at them that she can't just kill them. She's going to like make them suffer. And also they need time to loot all of Karth. You don't need these guys hanging around. Like somebody might let them out in a couple weeks.
Oh my god. Yeah, let the
You could
bodies
just like lock the door, drop the key, and keep walking. Like, oh well, maybe somebody will unlock this door. But I'll be long gone with all of your shit.
No, I don't think so. I think it's very much she kills them, and in a very brutal manner of locking them in a dark prison cell vault. And it's brutal, and it's kind
Locked
of
in a
psychopathic.
vault of his lies.
Lies.
You're in a vault of lies.
Vault of lies.
Where are you? I'm in a vault of my own lies.
Vault of my own lies.
But anyways,
I don't know.
I think it is brutal. It is becoming of Joffrey is what is becoming of. It is not becoming of any other of the rulers at this point in time. No other ruler that I can think of besides Joffrey would do this. And that's because she's cruel. She's a cruel person. And I'm going to start building a case from here on out.
Is it that she decides to do what she thinks is just, or is it because she secretly has a darker side to her that we may get to find out more about later?
Is it just to torture someone to death?
Even
The outrage on Gary's face as you insult Joffrey, his
His
favorite character.
no, after all the brutality you see in this show, like just like leaving someone in a vault to starve to death seems like the lesser of evils. You've watched people get burned the fuck alive. You've watched people get their tongues ripped out for singing. Like, this guy lied to her, like, took over a kingdom, stole her children, like, and did all this on a throne of lies. And by that point, she's like, I got my like, you tried to imprison me to steal my magic. You stole my children. Like, you get what the fuck is coming for you, dude.
Killed
And
some
I'd
more
be
people
okay.
too.
No, and I'd be okay if she killed them. If that was a just punishment. Torturing them to death is a very different type of punishment, and a punishment that's not
Killed half of
any
what was
king
left of her army.
does not met out by any king besides Joffrey. Joffrey is the only other king who tortures people to death like that.
Torture. Just leaving them to. They're in timeout for a bit.
Okay.
Agree to disagree.
I don't know. I don't think it's that. So you feel like they should have he just should have been killed off screen, like
No,
her handmaiden, who was like someone she trusted, who like went and worked for the enemy, like she deserved the cruelest. I don't know.
Oh.
I have no sympathy for them. None.
I don't have sympathy for them. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't have sympathy for them. I don't like Daenerys. There is a difference. And it is showing her to be who she is. If we're talking about people showing them who they really are in these last episodes, this is showing who she is. And who is she? She's vengeful. She's angry. She wants to have her just reward, and her just reward can be someone's pain. She's fine with that.
For perceived slights.
I'll give you the vengeful.
See, and I think. Sorry, you can go.
Oh,
Sorry.
no, you're fine. I'll give you the vengeful. It's not a bad point. I like that Gary is just like, we've seen worse. This is fine.
It's
I think it would be very different if it was like one of her knights had done it or one of her people had done it. It's like watching. There's the difference between watching Robb Stark turn someone into someone who reeks, and one of Robb Stark's bannermen turning someone into someone who reeks. It's very different morally implications.
Yeah, but does that mean that you're not very powerful if the people you have that you are controlling go off and do their own random stuff?
I just
Responsible
think
for them.
it's the culmination of her story arc this season. It's the culmination at the very first scene you see her in season 2. She's walking through the desert. She's starving. She's like she's lost half of her Khalasar and the other, losing more by the desert. She sent somebody off in one direction and like a horse came back with the guy's head in it. Like she begs at the doorstep and they're like, you know what? You can go somewhere else, motherfucker. And she's like, what? Like, how dare you fucking just try to kill me here? Like, she's just at her wit's end. She's a stranger in a strange land, and the only
How in
thing she
control of her family.
knows is the wrath of the dragon, and that the what is her husband her husband's tribe, the Khal Drogo. She only knows Khal Drogo's justice. Like
I don't know if you're trying to sell me on her here, but this is not selling me on her. If the only thing she knows is the vengeance to the sure, but if the only thing she knows is the vengeance of the Dothraki and the insanity of her family bloodline, why am I supposed to root for her?
I do admit that it's kind of interesting that the defense for Daenerys is coming from Gary, whose favorite character is Joffrey. The rest of us are rather quiet and hard to defend this.
True.
I just think that she's defending her children. Like her entire arc this season is about Ben defending her dragons. Like she wouldn't even show them to people because she was afraid they were just going to kill her outside the gate and take her dragon. And then she brings them in and she's like, oh, I'm going to teach them. And this will be a good place to raise my dragons until we can, move on. And then that gets pulled out from under her. So I just think that they're like her whole arc this season is driven by the birth of the dragons and the power being shown of the dragons and sort of her emotional arc of realizing she has power. But anyway, we're just going to agree to disagree.
You did make me just realize, though, Gary, that we've got 3 different women here: Cersei, Catelyn Stark, and Daenerys, that are all justifying their actions as defending their children.
Spot on.
Mm-hmm.
Are you all familiar with the Overton window? Like what is culturally acceptable and seen as allowable shifts depending on what a group or the society is allowed to witness or what transpires. Like if we see Catelyn release the Kingslayer, we think, how could you do that? That's so terrible. That's not justifiable. But then you see how Cersei treats people based on what she perceives as right and wrong. And that Overton window is the term I've always heard with it. That window shifts. You're more aware of, okay, well, maybe what was going on before is not the worst that could happen. Hearing Stephen and Gary talk about, what's defensible, what's not, well, you see how some people in the far extremes treat certain people, and you're like, okay, that what I thought was terrible and indefensible before is not the lesser of two evils. It's something that's actually far better in the context of what we're looking at, and that window shifts back and forth. it's interesting hearing some of these different arguments. Absolutely, yeah. It's the context is simply people doing what they think is in the best interest of their family. Do the ends justify the means? Is kind of where I my takeaway from that. Right here, I'm causing you physical pain while I talk.
I can see that. Yeah. You
Gosh,
okay?
Nick started a statement with the decisions and windows, and all I could think was like Jamie Lannister had windows, and he made decisions, and
Somehow Gary brings it all back to killing
justify
children.
the means, Nick. Oh my gosh, for anyone was listening, I was losing my shit the entire time Nick was talking about his window theory. I was
I thought you were
losing my
crying.
shit.
I was like, it wasn't sad what he was saying.
I've
Started
always
this
heard that
window
said by.
conversation,
I've always heard
and all
that
I could think
context of
was
that.
Jamie. Maybe keep throwing somebody out the window. It's like, well, in this narrative, like the ends justify the means. I'm like, holy shit. Just letting Nick finish his point. Sorry, I'm a
Terrible.
terrible person. I accept that. I do not condone children or windows.
All right, again, Tyler, we're right back where we started. Specifically said not to do this.
Sometimes I just can't even.
You just can't even. Just hearing the discussion. That's kind of where my brain is at. It's like what's allowable, what's not. As this show progresses and people get more and more deprived or more backed into a corner, what do we see as where people's true motives are? Does our view of them shift one way or another as far as, well, they're justified, like Gary's saying? This is something that you had it coming to you. It's like, all right, well, we're debating, something that maybe at the beginning of season 2, we were like, there's no way this character would do such a thing. Whereas now we're like, yep, I totally see that as something that this character would do.
So to keep it
That's very
vague here and stuff too, like as part of the rewatch, I'm definitely keeping an eye on characters and kind of their motivations and stuff because this is my
Absolutely.
first rewatch since the show had actually ended. So I'm kind of keeping my eye out on certain characters and kind of seeing, okay, does this interaction they do kind of provide maybe more motivation for something that I know happens later on in this show there. So I'm sure you guys could all probably think about maybe which character specifically I'm talking about and which action I think. But even just in general, too, I like watching the characters now and go, okay, does this actually maybe have further implications for what happens throughout the show? Obviously, don't want to get too much into spoiler territory with anything on this, too.
I am definitely an optimist. I will always be an optimist. I don't see the world in rose-colored glasses. Tyler and I have had multiple conversations about this, but I'm definitely an optimist. Again, like that's the phrase I said earlier. If you think this is going to have a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention. Is something that one of the characters says later on. And again, is it because those little nuances are there for you to pay attention to, or is it to shoot down people like me who are hoping for the best in everybody? Because there are certainly people, some of which we've already been discussing, who are showing that they're less than perfect people. So yeah, absolutely. It's interesting to see these characters have these little stepping stones that in the moment might be something that lends them one way or the other on the moral scale. Are these like the final little straw before they do something terrible?
I agree. I think the Overton window concept is actually really interesting too. So
Look it up. I'm more than willing to be proven wrong, but I believe it's called the Overton window, and it's that phraseology of how we classify things that are acceptable and things that shock us.
I guess moving on from my point real quick though. Next one that I had was switching back to the Seven Kingdoms again, and this is when Theon is giving a rousing speech to his men, and we'll stand and we'll be able we'll fight them on the beaches, we'll fight them at the sea, and then as I am giving the speech, basically Gary walks up behind me and clubs me in the head and knocks me out, and just goes, "Yeah, so what are we leaving now? We going?" And it
Had
was
to let him
amazing
finish
to
the
watch.
speech.
That was a good speech. Didn't want to ruin it.
Also, on the rewatch, the guy who said why'd you let him finish was the guy who the entire time is like, why the fuck would I listen to you? Like, I could just take the ship myself. Like that was that guy. Like, so obviously someone who didn't give a shit about him to begin with.
I think it was
Like,
also interesting. The guy who ends up clubbing him in the back of the head is basically the guy who's been giving him, I don't want to say advice the entire time, but been sort of a mentor for him.
So yeah, sort of
Right.
supportive of him or whatever.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely too with this thing, like the not to steal your thunder there a little bit, Stephen, but like this, it ends with Winterfell basically now being like cuts back to Winterfell. Bran, Asha, Hodor, and all of that are coming out of their crypt where they've been hiding, and they see Winterfell has been burned, and they have their final conversation with Maester Luwin. And I wrote down a note here that the music at the end of this Winterfell scene is just fucking fire, basically, of just how good it's the sad melody there that kind of just plays there of like, these kids now have to basically leave their home, the only place they've known for their entire life, and go traveling north for a chance to survive here while looking back on their home basically still on fire.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree. It is very interesting to watch and sad.
do we get a Hodor conversation during this episode, or was he silent?
I think he maybe said his name maybe once, but I don't remember him talking.
Sad. He needs to talk more.
Getting conversations from Hodor.
And then I guess the last 2 points I am sure Tyler will make, so I will pass them to Tyler.
Okay. So I'm going to jump back for one point there. This point is one of the points has always kind of confused me of like, it seems like after the Battle of Blackwater, Tyrion is just kind of wiped from the fact that he was there, he participated. Without him, it would have fell.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Like, why is it that they wiped Tyrion basically from the record of knowledge for? Because Varys says, there are people who were there who will remember without you, the city would have been lost and everything like that. But it's just like he's completely banished and everything like that. So I'm like just kind of wondering from like the group's perspective, why?
Narrative.
I
The
think that
narrative like the
everyone.
Lannisters are trying to sell there basically, or
I'd say oh, sorry.
I was just gonna kind of ask, is it the narrative like the in universe that they're trying to sell that Tywin Lannister rode in and saved the day there, or is it like narrative from
And
the
that
story
Joffrey was valiantly defending the entire time. You can't have a third person in that little two-way there.
Yeah. Okay. So
Go
yeah.
ahead, Gary.
Sorry, I was gonna say like the two most powerful people have to be your cornerstone points of your story. It can't involve this guy who everybody in the realm just kind of hates and thinks is a smart asshole here. Be there.
Yes.
Okay.
History is written by the victors, and the people who want to write the story are Tywin Lannister, the savior of King's Landing, Joffrey, the king, and Cersei, the queen mother, none of which like him. Like,
Of which have ever liked him.
why would any of them like give him any credit? Like, they just want him to be gone. All of them at some point or another have wished him dead.
I will say as well, I think a little bit of it also is the idea that because he successfully defended the city, it either puts them down because everyone goes, well, no, it does. It puts them down because everyone's going to hear the dwarf defended the city. Well, if the dwarf can defend the city, I could defend the city. Anyone could defend the city. My mother's cat could defend the city. So what the heck was your problem not defending the city? So you have to get him
Also,
out of the. You have to say he didn't rise up to expectations because if he did, that puts everyone else down.
Also, his rousing speech wasn't king and country. His rousing speech was fuck the king, fuck the palace, fuck all of it. Like,
Save your shit.
fight for yourselves and fight for your families.
Yeah.
Cause they're gonna fuck up your shit and they're gonna rape your wives and children.
Mhm.
So fuck everything else. Just fight for yourselves.
Someone
And
defend.
that's not a rousing narrative of history.
It's a good point.
It's not a good narrative for the royal family. Is my takeaway for that. Yeah, absolutely. Everything you all said. It's the narrative of first of all, telling them to fight for themselves is, I think, what made them rally the way they did. Because someone defending something that they truly care about is far better than fighting for the king that you've never met and who definitely doesn't care if you live or die. And it doesn't follow with the narrative of the royal family. Yeah, who saved the day? The half man. Where was the king? Hiding crap in his pants. And Tywin came in at the very end, like it was pointed out, to just ride in on his horse and save the day when everybody else already knew it was done. So I don't think that Tywin necessarily wants glory for himself, but for his children in the Lannister name. To say that Cersei was cheering people on and a great queen from the keep, and that the great Lannister army led by his troops, that he happened to be in charge of, saved the day. I don't think Tywin really cares much if he's glorified or not. He'll sit there and take it if it's given to him. I think that the story doesn't bode well if who saved the day, the half man that everybody despises or has some angst against for one reason or another. So it's not necessarily that they're like, we have to put him down. It's just they wanted him completely cut out, like you were asking, Tyler.
I would have to disagree with you about Tywin's stance on wanting glory there, though. He kind of mentioned with Arya there in those lovely scenes in the castle there at Harrenhal that he's riding off to his last great war there, basically the last great war. So he wants something to basically go out down and kind of put him in the history, like put his stamp really in the history books there. One last good time there. That would be my take on it there. To kind of disagree with that part there, that how he doesn't want it, but
Disagree with your disagree.
I'll disagree with your disagreement of my disagreement.
I disagree with both of your
both their
disagreements.
faces.
Oh.
All right. So moving on to, I'm guessing, the final 2 points there that Steven thinks I'm going to cover here. Point number 1 would be Jon Snow killing Qhorin Halfhand there, basically to try and prove himself, or kind of as part of the plot there, basically to get him into the Wildling camp there. Do you have any more to comment on that, Steven? Because really, I think it's just like, well,
Noble sacrifice.
Jon just kills the guy. I think it also too, Qhorin realizes that like if he's the one to survive, he'll still get slaughtered by the wildlings, because he's been killing wildlings for quite a long time there. Whereas Jon Snow has going against him of him being a new member to the Night's Watch. The word is probably spread of his father being a betrayer or unfaithful person to the realm there stuff too, and Jon Snow being a bastard child, which probably all fits into the narrative that he might be more willing to help the wildlings.
I agree with every point that you said there, and I will say that it also, when every time when I watch this episode the first time, and when I watch this episode this time as well, I am just taken by Qhorin Halfhand and just how great a commander he would have been anywhere else. Like, no one will know his name really. Qhorin Halfhand will be in a note in the little books. Imagine this guy on the fields of the War of the Five Kings or whatever it's called. It's self-sacrificing the entire time. He has tactical acumen. He knows what's going to be coming. He is very cognizant of it. It's every time I watch this, I'm just struck by Qhorin Halfhand. I'm like, that is a guy.
I don't know. I feel like later on they make this implication that it was kind of a setup, like, but even on the rewatch, like, I just didn't see it. It didn't seem like they were setting, like, that it was just like one line at the end that set up that he maybe did it intentionally, but I didn't think it was.
I think he literally tried to kill Jon Snow.
Yeah.
I think the groundwork was actually,
every time I rewatch it, I was like, this is just him fighting. I think Qhorin Halfhand still has his hands tied together the entire time. Jon Snow has like, maybe Jon Snow's hands get cut free at the end, but like, I just thought it was a fight between two dudes, and his last fuck you to Jon Snow was like we are the watchers on the wall.
I think you're missing a key point, Gary, that happened in, I think it was episode 8 there. There's a part where those two kind of butt heads,
Walking
Jon
on the
and
ridge
Corrin,
top.
when they're walking to whatever. And I think Corrin basically attacks him and kind of is able to get out to Jon, like, hey, we need to do something here, basically, to try and get you into the camp there, because they'll kill me anyways here. I think that,
Yeah, okay, maybe I do remember that. So it was trying to set up, but it was much like something else that I mentioned in this episode. Is like there was a giant gap in the storytelling, which is episode 9, which doesn't like it brings you somebody's completely different. And if you were watching us on the first watch through, that would have been 2 fucking weeks apart, which I guess is probably about relative to how long it took us between episodes. So
And also, like, I mean, Corin gives them just the barest information. Like, they might believe it if you sell it right. And basically then starts taunting him out loud in front of everybody and attacks him,
Mm-hmm.
which gives a much more sincere reaction on Jon's part. Because the character is not an actor at this point.
yes.
Actors playing actors again.
Actor's playing a guy who can't act. So, good work. And Corin sells it a lot more by Jon being like totally flabbergasted of like, no, I didn't betray you.
Jon knows
I think-
nothing.
And I think that's actually part of it. That's why he doesn't say so explicitly to Jon Snow, hey, I'm going to have you kill me. Because it's not going to be, I mean...
Besides, Jon's gonna say no.
Jon, being the honorable
Exactly.
man, would
Jon
be like,
will
no,
say
we'll
no.
find something else to do.
And if I was to, Gary, if I was to say to you, hey, Gary, okay, maybe a bad choice. Nick, if I was to say to you,
I was gonna,
continue with your point.
but if I was to say, you need to kill me. If you kill me, then you'll be able to, I don't know, get in with the X crowd or whatnot. Assumedly, being friends, you would probably say there's gotta be a better reason or better way to do it than that. And and that's why, Gary, by the way, that is why I said to Nick and not to you. So everyone knows. Gary heard that and just shook his head. Nah, I'd do it.
He had a beautiful one eyebrow raise, clearly considering his options.
But if you don't tell,
Okay, so I'm
Corin doesn't,
hundreds of miles away from the wall, like in an enemy encampment on my way to get killed, and you're like, oh, well, if you kill me, you can secretly betray them. And I was like, honestly, once you're dead, I'll reevaluate the situation moment to moment at that point.
ow. Just
But
laying it out there.
assumedly you'll be more reluctant to do it, and also it will look a lot less real if you are expecting it to happen.
A lot of
If you have
assumptions in this.
there is, but if there is
Gary's
an
not that
actual
great an actor.
fight, if there's an actual fight between the two people, if Jon, honest to God, doesn't entirely understand what's happening and is actually having to fight for his life there, that's going to make it very believable, regardless of the bad banter that Corin has.
Yeah, it sold it because Corin's willing to actually kill him, and Jon is gonna have to defend himself fully without thinking this is a play.
Willing to fall on that sword.
Bad puns.
I think Jon is more so defending himself than he is trying to stab Corin.
Okay, the final blow is him like just saying "fuck you" and just jamming an upward stab into the chest, like because he disarms Torin, and then like Jon doesn't like take any qualms about like cutting off his head or like just stabbing him through. He does like an upward like stab into his, or it just seemed real like. It didn't seem like good acting or good fight choreography. How's that sound? It's not good fight choreography.
Maybe halfway, trying to determine intent, but maybe there's a thought halfway through where Jon realizes what's happening, and the thrust and the anger comes from the fact that he realizes he's going to have to do something that in his eyes is dishonoring, dishonorable.
whether or not he wants to. He realizes at this point Corrin's forced him into it. He has to do it. He has to do this to make it work, to make it believable, to make the sacrifice worth it. But I mean, tell me, Gary, how would you go about killing Stephen if you chose to do this?
Yeah, listen.
Would have had these two plot points in the same fucking episode, or have them within back-to-back episodes. Like, they spaced too much shit out. Like,
Okay,
it
to
was
be fair,
poor
that's kind of how
storytelling.
that's kind of how it happens in the books too, though, because you have the different people's perspectives, and once you get back to their perspective, a while could have passed, and it's
Yeah.
always like you're involved in 3 different plot lines at once while you're reading, so it kind of holds true to the book in that way.
It's intentional storytelling to let the viewer forget sort of the intricacies of the previous time you talk to them, because obviously going to season 3 you find out what happens after this. And so I think in the original watch you'd have to wait 6 fucking months to watch the next episode.
This is
Right.
season
So-
3?
What?
Spoilers.
Then I
Spoiler.
just got...
Season 3 happens next.
Oh, darn.
Spoiler. But just like intentionally like spreading out narrative to like make you like so that you could have different views on the same scene, whether or not it was intentional or not unintentional. Anyway, that's all I had to say. We can wrap it up on this very niche acting conversation.
And then I'm
the
gonna
the
guess...
intent.
Oh, go ahead.
Just say the intent and the motive is what was really interesting for me in that interaction. Just the fact that it's like I said earlier, I am pretty much an optimist, and so I get that turmoil of him not wanting to do it. Even if that's the only option, I would absolutely be like, no, we're not going to do this, no. And then he doesn't really go for that killing blow until the end.
But then everyone around him like is buddy with him. It's just like it's poor storytelling.
Well, you hate the crows as a wildling. You hate all the crows. To see a crow kill another crow, even if you don't fully trust that one, you'd probably cheer. Enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't like cut his hands loose and like give him his sword back and pat him on the back.
They didn't
To
give
an
him a
extent, you
sword
probably
back,
think. To an extent, you probably feel like you got one crow who you just saw kill another crow, whether they really wanted to or not. Surrounded by 200 other wildlings? How far is he going to get in the middle of nowhere? I'd cut his hands. What good is he going to do? It looked like he really wanted to kill his friend, and probably a pretty poor swordsman in his swordplay. I'm not really terrified of him. I'm a tough wildling. I'll cut his hands. Let him go do whatever he wants to do.
One crow is better than 2.
Yeah, exactly. So green,
Right.
pisses grass.
All right. To move on to the final part of the episode and the season, we are flashed back to our boys at the Fist of the First Men, out collecting poop to burn for fires there. And then, as they're having a nice conversation, Sam's
They
informing
were
everybody.
sorting poop too. There's a
Yes.
small, like, intricate line about like, what kind of poop is this? Ah, damn it, we didn't get the good poop. We got the moose poop.
As Sam is
Sorry,
telling them
noticing the
also too
details.
about the wonderfulness of Gilly, the storm rolls in here. The winter storm happens to roll in. Well, actually, no, take that back. A horn is blown, not once, not twice, 3 times, indicating there are White Walkers out there. And then the winter storm rolls in there, basically, with Gren and Ed making their way away from Sam. Sam happens to fall behind, as he does. Gets stuck behind a rock there and happens to turn and look, and there is a White Walker on a horse there, basically. And then pans out behind him for a good ways, and you just see a small portion of the army of the undead there, basically. Kind of showcasing their power a little bit, and then the episode ends.
This is always.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask, is this the first time we've seen one of the White Walkers and not a White Walker zombie?
No.
So
No, very, very first episode, I think,
First
of the first
episode.
season.
Yeah.
You see the figure with the blue eyes in the forest, but this is actually, I think, like the first time you see
Body shot.
what they look
Well,
like.
and what I mean is like the
Frontal.
White Walker itself. Like we're talking an actual being, not a zombified,
I don't
whatever.
think it's a spoiler, but the art direction of the White Walkers evolves over time.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
this is a very like first draft version of the White Walkers.
Still scary.
Beautiful cinematography. Very well done scene.
Mhm.
I mean, I was like, oh my god, 3 blasts of the horn. Terrifying. They do a great
But
job.
I like the way they do it. Oh, they've come back. Oh, the wildlings are coming. Oh, shit.
Yep.
Talked about this in another episode too. It's like, why make the most dangerous thing the 3 blasts you have to wait
Right?
for?
Yes. Yes.
No, I the thing with this is like the iconic like meme that circulated forever too. It's like the scene shows them at the flipping wall. It's close.
No, they're
It's at the
or-
Fist of the First Men.
Fist of the First Man. Okay, and so the thought is always like, well, they're right there. They're close. And then the next few episodes just kind of veer maybe a little bit from. It's going to jump right into that. It's this leg, like you just said there, where kind of ends the season there. So you have some time. You have some time until the next episode comes, and so you're like, what happens? Sam is right there. What's gonna happen? And yeah, true to form, like you were just saying, there's multiple storylines to continue. Rather, sometimes it's not the one you're hoping for. So it's very, very much the cliffhanger to find out what's going on. And yeah, it does a good job, building that suspense.
Just looking at a quick map I pulled up here too. The Fist of the First Men is a good distance away from where they left of even Craster's Keep.
I must have missed part of that. Again, I was trying to watch these just before we started here. Yeah, like how it seemed like they're a lot closer to the wall or a lot closer to Craster's than I thought they probably were originally. So they still had some ways to go.
We can
Oh, sorry.
talk about this on the next episode, but I always was really confused. Maybe it's explained in the book how the fuck Sam survives this stupidity and doesn't get eaten alive. It's probably maybe it's mentioned in the next season. It was kind of plot armor.
Six Machina.
In the books, I think it's one of those kind of like flash forward things in the books where it's like they're here, and then we're at the end results of the situation there in the books. There.
I think so. I don't remember for sure.
Anyway,
But
yes, it definitely is an end of season scale of like sort of reminding everyone of the impending White Walker attack.
This larger threat that looms while all these people are south playing politics. There's this larger threat north of the wall there.
Right, shifts focus to what we should really be discussing. Not
The only
like
other thing that
them.
oh, sorry. The only other thing I was gonna say is I would like when Gary was mentioning all these different things, trying to keep track of them. I wonder how many different branching plot lines there are at this point in time right now to keep track of, because there's got to be a fair amount. I mean, you have the main storyline plot lines, and that's got to be at least 4 or 5, and then all the branching plot lines. There's got to be a lot right now.
And then not to like throw out spoilers about anything in particular, but then like just how many of those plot lines get started but then don't actually go anywhere because of either the show's direction, the story not being fully finished, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think and there's other there's other things that sort of I think are going on. Like there's one of the direwolves has kind of a backstory that I thought was better explained in the books.
Nymeria.
Which one?
Yes.
Oh.
Ghost? Nymeria?
Lymeria. I think it's Lymeria has a continuing backstory in the Riverland.
With an N.
Whatever. The dog. No one's ever spelled the name or written it down. It's the name of a dog.
Technically,
It
Nymeria
is
is the name.
definitely not true.
It's in the books. It's written down in the books.
Oh,
And she was named
Tyler.
for
Mic
a
drop for Tyler on that one.
Well, yeah, she was
She was
named
named for a
for.
character in history in Game of Thrones. So
Yeah.
yes, it was
Bam.
written down, but that doesn't matter, Gary. Go ahead.
Anyway,
Keep
but I
digging your
feel
hole,
like
Gary.
there's some other stories going on. Speaking of other plot threads that are
Oh yeah,
just ignored.
there's definitely like plot threads and stuff like that going on in the books, and then stuff in the books that doesn't transition over to the show at all. Big one coming up here next season.
So,
We'll
like,
talk
just
about.
characters that have kind of gotten pushed to the backs of. I don't know if Littlefinger appeared at all in episodes 9 or 10, or is he maybe in the council
It was
chambers?
in
He was in
10.
10. I
I
He's
just
in
made the
10.
call
He
out that
receives
he's
Harrenhal.
the new host of Harrenhal.
Oh, that's right. Whatever.
He
Who
wasn't
But you
in
hosts
just-
the
9 at all
famous
that I
game show
remember.
Harrenhal?
Yeah, who
But-
has Harrenhal? The famous
Who
game show.
has Harrenhal?
But just characters who are kind of, and then Jamie Lannister's sort of plot story that kind of gets just dipped its toe in episode 10, and then
Yeah.
like
That's right. Yeah, there was a point I was going to make too, like of we touched on this talking a little bit about episode 9, and then now in episode 10 there it's kind of the other side of the coin of like, we talked about how Sansa Molly has a vision, this thought in her head of like all of her father's men are these honorable people and everything like that. When we come to find out, it's these 3 Stark men who killed and raped these women that they then have hanging on the road that Brienne and Jamie are taking there, and Brienne has to basically kill them to save her own life.
Hold on, Tyler. I was assured by good company that Northmen had better morals than Southmen.
Boom.
stand by my
Sometimes.
Words were said. Regrets were had.
All right, but to I guess bring this episode kind of towards the close here. Anyone have anything they want to kind of touch on, kind of finer points of season 2 overall, or are we all kind of good with how this has gone so far?
I think
Sure.
things have been set in motion that cannot be changed.
Things continue to things continue to move forward too, just from the simple fact of Ned Stark losing his head from season 1. Things have
Right,
continued
yeah.
to
Yes.
progress forward just because of that
season
puddle ripple
2
there.
follows book 2, The Clash of Kings.
Yep.
And after this season, the lines of book to show start to
Interesting.
get a little more disjointed, because I believe book 3 is 2 seasons. Is season 3 and 4, if I'm remembering correctly.
Well, books 4 and 5, The Feast for Crows and The Dance with Dragons, are technically all happening at the same time, but he wrote so much that he had to basically split them off into different books. So certain characters are in one book, and then certain characters are in a different book there.
Now he can't finish
Interesting.
one book.
Oh.
I'm still upset.
But yes, and at this point, all 5 kings are still. Nope, Renly died. Never mind. That was the
Kings.
only. They're down to 4 kings,
Yes.
which is Joffrey, the King Beyond the Wall, Mance Rayder.
I don't
Yeah.
think he's counted in that.
But
I
he's
think,
not.
Counting
No,
as
I
one of
don't. He's
those?
not counted. No.
no.
Stannis,
So it's
Joffrey.
Joffrey, Stannis, Renly, Robb, and
Greyjoy.
Greyjoy.
No,
No, not.
So now Renly's gone. It's just Greyjoy, Bob,
is Greyjoy one of
Stannis,
them?
and Joffrey.
I
Yeah.
don't think so.
I thought
He
the
is?
Greyjoy was one of them because he declared himself king of the Iron Islands or whatever.
The Salt Crown. He
Yeah.
Took
donned the Salt Crown.
Yeah.
So I just always assumed that Mance Rayder was one of the 5 kings, but that's because I'm terrible at math. So
I think it might be Mance. I don't think it's Theon.
It's not
Is-
Theon, it's his
'Cause-
dad.
No, not
They
not
don't
Theon.
really know
No.
about Mance. Mance isn't a threat right now to them, though, that they know of.
he's
The only
known
thing
as
is
that
the
they
Night's
get
Beyond
Watch.
the Wall.
isn't it the Night's Watch guy who comes down to collect the people from the jails in King's Landing to bring them back north, which Arya sneaks along with, and he presents that letter to the small council, and Cersei says, "Another king north of the wall." How many does that make now? 5? Like, just being sarcastic about it. I think that she's referring to him, because I think his name is Balon Greyjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Is Theon's dad. I don't think Balon says he's going to be king until like towards the end when Theon gets sent down. It's like episode 6 or something like that. I think it is Mance.
I still,
The 5. I don't know.
because they're talking about the War of the Five Kings. The Five Kings who are at war with one another are Balon Greyjoy, Joffrey Baratheon, Stannis and Renly Baratheon, and Robb Stark. Those are all the 5 kings who are fighting. They really
Balon
don't.
could say he's king of the Iron Islands, but I don't really think he's at war for the other Iron Islands. He just wants to rape and pillage along the coast. Like he says, I'm king of myself. I take the salt price, whatever, and just says I'm going to do whatever I want to do. I don't think he's in this because the War of the Five Kings. Don't get it twisted. Is for the Iron Throne. That's what everybody's fighting for, and I don't think Balon doesn't want.
Well,
Mance
technically,
Rayder doesn't.
Robb Stark doesn't want the Iron Throne.
Yeah, and Mance Rayder wouldn't want it either. He just wants his people south of the wall.
And Robb Stark just wants the independence of the North.
I secede.
I think, honestly, this is very emblematic of how
no.
confusing even
Sure.
written history could be interpreted. Who are the 5 kings? Because
we have the omnipotent knowledge of everything going on in the show, and we don't know.
Exactly. And then all the while you have a queen with dragons coming.
Okay.
You have
Gosh, maybe I was Googling it.
Does it say? The internet, all knowing, give us the answer.
Google is the god.
Exactly. What does it say? Who?
Okay, Joffrey Baratheon, Balon Greyjoy establishes the independent kingdom of the Iron Islands. Robb Stark, Stannis Baratheon, Renly Baratheon. That makes 5. So Mance Rayder is not a part of the War for the Five Kings.
Interesting. In my mind, I don't see Balon as that much of a threat versus a bunch of wild.
He is very poorly written.
Yeah, I don't.
Fell to Winterfell.
Book Balon versus show Balon, I think, are two completely, I mean, not completely different characters, but they're 2 differently written characters. They don't really do too much with the Iron
It's a lot
Islands in
more
the
on
show.
Theon and his sister.
Asha?
Yara.
Yara.
In the
Yara.
book, it's Asha.
Yeah.
In the show, they changed it to make you not confused with Osha.
Good job with the show there.
Anyway, I just think they don't do as much plot development on Balon Greyjoy.
No, not at all. Not at all. Even, and again, no spoilers here, but even going forward, I don't think there's very much development there.
No.
I'm trying to think about it, and I'm not even sure how it ends. For that plot point.
If we're trying to think about any character and how their story ends out, it's just bad.
Yeah. It goes to show how little this focused on the actual Iron Islands and the actual, Balon the King.
Or Yara's, all of Yara's battles and conquests. It's just sort of
this whole time it's
They don't
happening.
care.
She was sent originally to go do her own thing, and she pops up just to be like, here's some words of advice, brother. And then she takes her crew and leaves. But this whole time, like we're saying, weeks have passed. She's been raiding and pillaging and raping and doing whatever she's doing up and down the coast.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, here's another 5 kings. It becomes Daenerys Targaryen. Is Daenerys one of the 5 kings?
Yet.
That might have been where I got my thought about who's going after the Iron Throne, because Daenerys definitely would be.
All right, though. Any other final parting words here to talk about here, or?
Gary has words of wisdom.
I have the knowledge of Google. So, king number 1, the king of the Iron Throne, King number 2, the King of the Narrow Sea. King number 3, the King in Highgarden. King number 4, the King in the North. The Queen across the water.
It's very different
I
than the
don't
first
agree
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
with
In the
What's
appendix of the Clash of Kings, the first section, the title The Kings and Their Courts, it lists out the following.
Oh, that's interesting.
Hang on
So
now.
that's cool.
So the source is being quoted as
J.R.R.
Tolkien.
Tolkien.
Yes, yes.
Tolkien.
My mind is way off. Sorry, it's late. It was yesterday when we started this, folks.
I mean,
Oh,
if Tolkien
God.
said that, it's right for sure. So
Exactly, right? We don't butt against Tolkien, even if Gary refutes him. Yeah, if this is George R. R. Martin's as the source, that's hard to negate. The kings and their courts.
Well,
Anyway,
anyways,
that's
yes.
You'll never finish this. As much as you try and wrap us up, Tyler. Gary
Yes.
keeps adding
Anyway,
points.
just gonna rewrite it as we go. Anyway, I'll let Tyler wrap it up.
Okay. So for next time here, when we start up there again here, we'll be watching season 3, episode 1 and episode 2. Let me pull up the titles here. Season 3, we have Valor Daharis, and then Dark Wings, Dark Words. Some stuff is coming here as we move into season 3 here. All right.
Interesting.
Yep. Just interesting. Gonna sit there and twiddle your mustache. Got it. All right. All right. Well, thank you everyone out there for listening. We will see you next time. Have a good one.